In dark, damp, shaded forests of Europe, there is a plant that was used for hundreds of years for various ailments. It had many legends surrounding it and many different uses, many different ways how to use it, but it is pretty much forgotten today. Most of the people today would not even notice it or think twice about it even when they do notice it. And when you see it, you will know why. It's easy to not see this tiny plant in the shades of deep woods. It's not too big, not too flashy. You really need to focus to notice it. But once you start looking, you also start to notice many different details, and even more so when you start to dig into its history, which is what we are going to do right now. This plant is a member of the carrot family, as you can see. Maybe you could already recognize this if you know about this family, because it has these characteristic umbels, these clusters of whitish, sometimes purplish flowers that are typical for the carrot family. You will notice its stem does not have many leaves, if any, and the leaves it does have are on the ground. They are dark green or green, kind of glossy, and they are deeply lobed. Flowers themselves are mostly white at the first glance, but when you take a longer look, you can see the purplish, red, pinkish kind of notes on them. And this is not just any kind of plant. This is the plant that was known for centuries as a plant that closes both physical and spiritual wounds. And it was said that if you have both wood Sanicle and self-heal, you don't need either physician or surgeon. Notes like this have been known since the times of herbalist Nicholas Culpeper, and likely even much earlier. The word Sanicle itself comes from Latin, which means health or to heal. So this tells you a lot about the uses for this plant. So you might say, cool, it was used for healing outward and inward wounds, but what does that mean exactly? Most of the time, plants like these were used to close up wounds. So they would be made as poultices and applied directly on the wound, and because of tannins, the wound would close much faster than usual, and because of other anti-inflammatory substances, there would be no infection. Other uses included, but not limited to, making tea, decoctions, extracts, all sorts of things. As always, a word of caution: this is not medical advice. If you have serious issues, go to whoever you need to go. This is just an introduction or brief story about historical uses, which are quite great. And to be honest, this plant should be celebrated and mentioned a bit more. On the other hand, maybe it's better less people know about it, because you know what happens when people find useful thing and their greed engine starts up. What is interesting is when you look to history of the plant, you also see that the plant itself wasn't as popular as some other healing plants, even in medieval ages and a bit later on, and probably earlier than that. So even throughout Middle Ages, plants that were used for healing and were quite popular were actually the plants you could find in open pastures, grasslands, meadows and garden, mostly on the sunshine or partial shade maybe. In order to get this plant, you would have to go deep into the woods, which is maybe not too practical for some people. So throughout history, this plant was actually known not as a popular go-to healing plant, but as a plant with associated a lot with healing and restoration, but also with kind of mysticism, maybe would be a strong word for that, but a bit less popular things. In medieval times, various herbalists, hermits, people living outside of society, kind of plant nerds. There is no need to call me out like that, but they were the ones who had most knowledge about this plant. Sometimes it was used to, of course, ward off evil. It would be weared or put somewhere to protect something, but this varies a lot throughout cultures and maybe even individual households, so it's very hard to track those kinds of stories. And here comes the sun. Not a good place to find wood sanicle, by the way. If you want to find it, look on the edges and inside, deeper in the forests. And you are more likely to find it somewhere where woods are not messed around with. So older growth woods. And for the end, I just wanted to show you one more thing. The white umbels you see here are not wood sanicle. There is way too much sunshine for them to thrive here. But it is also carrot family, and I wanted to emphasize some similarities and other words of caution that you should have when it comes to carrot family. You can see here when I put the wood sanicle next to the ground elder, it is much smaller. The leaves are also quite different, which is again there to say just because something is in the same family, it doesn't mean the resemblances are going to be enormous. Just like when you have brothers and sisters who are completely different in personality and sometimes even physically, the same thing is with plants. Carrot family is one of the most tricky families for beginners, for beginner herbalists, foragers, even enthusiasts. Of course, if you're not going to use the plant in any way, that's the safest way to go. But carrot family has one of the most dangerous and poisonous plants like that, like poison hemlock, hemlock water dropwort, and so on. The list doesn't stop there. And sometimes differences are superficially tiny, and if you don't have experience, you might end up being not very much alive, which is, I guess, not something that you prefer. So be careful out there and open your eyes, look at details, and dig out through history. I'm pretty sure you're going to find many interesting things there. Now, if you remember at the beginning, we mentioned Nicholas Culpeper and those earlier times, and one of the things that was cited in numerous different books at the time, even today, is that if you have wood sanicle and self-heal, that you don't need physician or surgeon. Of course, in modern times, this is not something we hold on to, but just some interesting historical fact to remember. And if you are curious about the self-heal, you can watch the other video here where I cover the uses, the identification of the self-heal plant. I hope you enjoyed this and see you next time.